Thank you, Diletta. That was such a warm welcome. And thank you to everyone. I am so humbled and pleased to be in front of you. And I think that comes from being in your seats last year, and I know what this is like. So thank you for spending the next 20 minutes with me. So hello, I'm Samantha. I work out of my own ceramic studio called the Sona Francis Samantha Mathews Studio. That's a big mouthful. And I'm also a learning designer. And I work across the public and private sector. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and honour the unbroken connection to this special and unique place they've had for more than 2,000 generations, and extend that respect to elders past and present. So, I know that, well, I'm going to guess that every one of you in this room are good at something. Maybe it's your jobs, maybe it's something else. Maybe you're a really good chef. Maybe you're a really good dancer. Maybe you're a really good friend or a brother or a sister or a parent or a child. Maybe you're good at drawing. So if you'll humour me for a little bit, can you all find something to draw with and to draw on? Because I've got a bit of an experiment for you. Are you ready? Okay, so the experiment is to draw something, and there are two things I want you to remember. That you have to try, and that you might not be good at it, but you have to try, and that you have to finish the drawing. Is that all right? Great. So I'm putting a timer on for a minute, and you need to draw a horse. Let's go. So that's time, and that's your minute to draw that horse. Pens down if I have to stop. Can you show me? I'd love to see. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So good, so good. Holy, guys, show each other. Show your new friend. So, how did that feel? Did you draw a better horse than your neighbour? Or did you draw a worse horse than your neighbour? Yeah. So to that... Yeah. It's like some of you have never seen a horse before, I don't know. So without this, so how did that feel? Good, bad? Yeah. Maybe you weren't great at it, and that's cool, but you need this horse. I want you to take this horse home and put it on a wall somewhere, because without this horse, you're never going to do another horse, and you're never going to get better. So there always has to be the first, and this is your first horse. Yeah? Without it, there is nowhere to go. So I said at the start, I'm an artist, and sometimes I really struggle to claim that title. Actually, all the time, I really struggle to claim that title, because in my head, someone's going to work out that I'm not an artist and that they think everything I do is trash. And then that seems to spiral into everything else that I do is trash, and not just trash. Trash that can't be recycled is contaminated and like destined for the fires of hell. That is the narrative that my brain tells itself. And I try and remember that the reason I feel that is because I'm a serial pivoter. My undergraduate's in chemistry. And my first job was in product development, and trust me, not the digital kind. I was working in a lab as a scientist making paint and testing paint, and no word of a lie, I have seen so much paint dry on walls. That was actually my job. But what I've been doing is taking some skills and then transplanting them into industries and organisations and places that I feel like I have no right to be, and so hence this imposter syndrome. But also, why does someone do that? That takes this wild self-confidence that you're going to be okay and that everything's going to be all fine. And so I'm somehow both of those. And I think we're all both of those. I think we have these moments of, I'm amazing, I'm going to do this, let's go. And oh my gosh, I am trash, I'm going to go hide in a bin. So between those two things, we're all there at some point or the other. And I think the important thing is getting ourselves out of the trash can and back to this wild self-confidence thing, right? And I have two ways to do it. There's a quick way and a long way. The long way, sad news, guys, it's called doing the work, because doing the work gives you the permission, and from there you move forward. But the quick way to do it is to go, that's a shit question, I'm not answering it, move on. All right? So I'll come back to the it's a shit question approach, but I highly recommend it. Because I want to show you something, right? And I'll get there. So this is conceptual art. And conceptual art tells us that the idea is the most important thing about the art. Not the visual representation, not what your horse looks like. It's the idea. And it fosters in us, when we interact with conceptual art, interrogation and constant questioning and introspecting. And that means that we end up with more personal connections to what we're looking at. Like, is that a banana on the wall? Do you know that banana comes with an instruction to the gallery that the banana must be replaced every 7 to 10 days? So someone has to go out there and take the banana off the wall and put another one up. Those candies that were in a gallery, they got eaten over the week, and every week they had to go replace the candies. How did someone get away with selling that as art? And this is Yoko Ono. I mean, girl, is she getting us to make our own art? Like, she's literally done a project and we make the art. And I think all the time, is that art? And then I say to myself, that's the shit question. That's not the question we're asking. Because if that is a banana taped to the wall, and I think about it, what that artist has done is forced us into thinking about it more deeply, if you want to. And if you choose to think about conceptual art, the idea a little bit more deeply, you're getting to the point where the personal engagement is yours, and the feeling of when you get it, or if you get it, that's the bit that really takes you forward. So this is another one, and this is Joseph Kosuth, 1 in 3 chairs. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to look at it, and in quiet, just look at it. The instinct is to ask, is this art, and what am I looking at? But go beyond that question, because what we've got here is the chair in the language of objects. We've got the photograph of the exact same chair, and then we've got a dictionary definition of a chair. And by itself, all those things are chairs, but then you put them together, what are we looking at? And how is this art? Are we now thinking about what it takes to communicate an idea, what it takes when we exclude information, and what it takes when we include too much information? So you've seen this, and then there's this, right? So how much information do we need when we're looking at things, and how much better is it when we get it for ourselves? When we start asking the right questions, you start to look beyond the surface. In conceptual art, this means looking past that initial reaction and thinking, what's the deeper significance? What's the connection? And I think we ask those questions of ourselves in our work all the time. Asking insightful questions, we get more meaning out of something. And in both art and design, that process, the process of asking, is as much a good thing as the outcome can be. So for you as designers, for us as designers, when we're thinking about the creation process, the resulting work is only going to be so much better. I can see the great story, Sam, look on most of your faces right now, and I'm like, yeah, good. We're not in art class, get on with it. So I want to give you a couple of techniques for how you can do observation. Maybe you looked at that chair thing and didn't get it, but that's cool, because you have to ask is that art? How is that art question before you go further? So totally cool, but how do you get past it, right? So 2 things, but the umbrella thing you need to do is slow down. So if you're moving really quickly when you're looking at things, you're not observing. To observe, you really, really need to slow down. So I always say, let the robots jump off the conclusion cliff, because you and I, we are going to ground our feet, we're going to stay in this moment, and we're going to look at something. And it takes time. But one of the ways you can do this is by measuring. Have you seen that stock photo that artists do, and they're kind of like squinting their eye and they've got their thumb in the air? Yeah? So what they're doing, and I want us all to try it, is they're measuring. So you're using maybe the distance of your nail and you're holding it up against something and you're going, well, that is 4 nail widths, right? So try it. Maybe try it with like me, right? So here I am. How many thumbs have you got before you get down? How many thumbs, right? And the trick of it is to always keep your arm fully extended. Otherwise, it changes the perspective. But by doing that, you're cataloguing as you go. Okay, that's 1 thumb for her head, 1 thumb for her shoulders, whatever that is. But by slowing down and doing the work of measuring, you're actually looking at it a bit more closely. And the other piece about this is, or the other technique that you can borrow from artists all over the world, is framing. So it's another fun stock photo. But what we do when we create a frame around something is I can only just see what's in that frame. So try it. And it's something else, not me this time, gosh. Frame something else up and then ignore everything outside of that box. Everything. When we decide, when we're solving problems and we create a frame around a part of a problem and we decide that nothing else exists and it's only what's in that box, we do so much better, again, that cataloguing, measuring piece, but we're also just focusing really carefully on what's in that box. I think it's always really important to be intentional about opening and closing the boxes that you're looking at. It's really easy just to open all the boxes and then have chaos, right? But what we do when we're solving problems is to focus on just that one box at a time. So open and close them with intent and you will be so much further along. And you might not have framed the right thing. In every likelihood, you framed the complete wrong thing. Totally cool. But at least you know that from there, you can move forward. All right. So we've got we've had some observations. We've seen some stuff. Great, right? Great that we've seen some things. Great that we've experienced some things. So what do you do now? So what do you do now, Sam? What you do is it informs your ideas. So everything that you observe and that you catalogue and you measure in your mind, think of it like a dot. And you're basically going around your life collecting these dots. And the more of these dots that you can collect, the better you are at connecting them. And that's a quote from Amanda Palmer, not my own fancy words. So you want to be collecting and connecting dots as you go. And ideas, that's the fun bit. And that's where good ideas come from, right? All the different experiences we've had, all the different dots that we've gone and collected from all over the world, whatever we're doing, coming to this conference, these are the dots that we put into our mind and allow them to marinate together. And then from those dots connecting, you get new ideas and better ideas. The problem with that is that when we're thinking about all these great new ideas, the same place that the ideation comes from is also where our anxiety lives. So the ability to think creatively and do the creative work is often where the anxiety also comes from. So when I talk about opening the right boxes, we need to open the box for the ideas, but not so much for the chaos and anxiety. One of my friends, Caroline Menzies, she's an artist that we share studio space, and she always says that ideas are like cats at the door at nighttime. They're like scratching and trying to get in. And you can let them all in, but then you have a house full of cats. And that, not ideal, unless I love cats. And to be honest, I would love a house full of ideas. But could you imagine the chaos of having a house full of cats? So be intentional about the cat that you let into your house, because once it's there, you've got to do something else with it, right? So be intentional about what ideas you let in, because the ideas where they're coming from is also where the anxiety lives. So let the right cat into the house. And from there, what do you do? Yeah, what do you do? So you can't live with your house full of cats. You can't live with maybe your 2 cats. For me, I'm someone who loves an idea. I can spend all day in idea land. I love it. I love coming up with new ideas. I love then setting up an Instagram account. And then I'm like, maybe I should get an ABN. Wouldn't that be clever? And maybe while I'm here, I'll build a website. This is great. So for me, ideas, love that place. Where I struggle is the doing. So for me, I really have to change the way I start and stop thinking. And I go into experimentation mode. And particularly scientific experimentation, it's crucial for getting stuff done. And this is about doing the work. But what I like about scientific experimentation is it's very structured. Did anyone do science in high school? Yeah. Front row is like, yes. I don't want to make any assumptions here, but so with science, there's always, the hypothesis, the method, the materials, the whatever, right? It was very structured. And if you were me, you probably wrote it out before you went to class, so you had all the right answers in place before you did the experiment. Don't do that. But having this structured approach around your experimentation, really important. So those things are like having a hypothesis. You always start with that in science and go, well, I think this, which is good and well. But in the world of work, it's we think this customer is going to like this, therefore that. That's your hypothesis. And I know we talk a little bit about ripping up the brief, and I get it, I really like that. But what I call that is my starting hypothesis. And from there we go, okay, what's next from the starting hypothesis? So the same in sort of the way we do our jobs. It's like a concrete data point, or it's a concrete dot point that we can then have for better and further ideas. Got a bit of a story. When I was a baby chemist straight out of uni, they had this problem at the lab I worked at. It was a paint lab, one of the paint companies. Anyway, what was happening in summer, it was the heat of summer, and the paint was splashing onto the lid, drying, and then falling back into the paint. Real problem, no one liked it. And all the real scientists got tasked with fixing the problem. I, on the other hand, got replicate the results, right? And for an ideas person, did not enjoy that. Not only now is paint drying on the wall, paint was drying on insides of plastic lids, so I was really enjoying that job. But what I started thinking about was, those bubbles that people blow, those gigantic bubbles that you can, they do it at circuses? Well, bubbles are my cells, and like my science brain kicked in, and I was like, it's a really low surface tension, and, it kind of looks like this intersection between like all the little 3 connecting lines. It's like, do you know what that looks like? That looks like a honeycomb. I wonder if we could somehow stop the paint from falling back into the bucket with a honeycomb. Not to bury the lead here, guys, no one named the building after me. It wasn't that dramatic. But I came to work the next day with chicken wire, and I hot glued it to the inside of a paint bucket lid. And I was like, guys, solved it. So the confidence of a junior chemist, hey, like it's wild, come and sit with me. But, this idea that I was like, well, yeah, we can just stop it from falling back in. And that wasn't the solution, and that is not what they ended up doing. But I was part of the team that then developed a spray paint coating that went into the lids and onto the buckets that stuck the paint to the walls instead of falling back in. So you never know where these little seeds of ideas are going to come from. So collecting these dots, no matter how random they feel, somehow, somewhere they might come back and really influence you. So let's land this thing, because I've got to get off the stage, right? Observation, very good. Coming up with ideas, helpful if we observe things. Ideas, like cats. We can't let them all in, but we've got to let some of them in. Don't let the chaotic cats in, because then you have a house full of cats and maybe some anxiety. We don't want that. So choose the cats that come with you. And once they're there, now we're running experiments, right? Not on the cats, gosh. Sounds terrible. So we think experiments. What's my hypothesis? What's my method? What's my materials? How am I doing this? Be systematic, be specific, and go through it in the same order. Having these 2 sorts of ways of working really helps us get shit done. And that gives you permission to be where you are, to say that you're an artist. I don't know if you saw this before, but this kills me every time I see it. Completely gets me. It's called The Untitled Portrait of Ross in LA. And it was 87 kilos of lollies piled into a gallery, and people were asked to take from the lollies as they were there. Cool. 87 kilos is the healthy weight of an average man. And Ross was Felix's partner, and he had HIV, and his body was disintegrating, and he was losing weight, and he ended up passing away. 2 years later, the artist Felix, he also passed away from the same HIV. And it just gets me, because how do we How does someone communicate that? But then how beautifully communicated is that through the experience of this conceptual art? So, I just want to say before I wrap, that, we've talked about where ideas come from. The concept is the art. And I think that if you have an idea that you are an artist and you are also a scientist, so go out into the world is your lab, do the experiments, get it done. And if you like any of that, let's be friends.